Welcome to this week's edition of Cattle Call. I'm Susan Littlefield. I wish we were coming to you with some exciting new information when it comes to the cash, but it seems that we're stuck in a 7 week rut, and we'll talk more about that. Look at the weights on the cattle, look at some fundamentals that are taking place within the trade. A lot of varieties today as Brad Kooima joins us. You can see him on the screen with us. He's with Kooima and Varlick out of Sioux Center, Iowa. So let's start out with this cattle premium. Are we seeing a premium to the cash right now?
Yes, and we've gotten used to that here the last little while. Unfortunately, Susan, or unfortunately, whatever. I mean, the reality of it is, we saw February carry a premium through all the way into delivery, and actually had quite a few deliveries because of that premium structure. And frankly, we never really had convergence till basically the last 5 minutes of the contract, with future staying over cash. So, and now we certainly have that again in the April. Where cash cattle, at least around here, 113 is about it. So we're trading 5 to 6 over, but it's the 10th of March. And my view in this thing, Susan, is that I would probably expect that we're going to continue to have that. You've got I think you've got an underlying perspective from the fund trade, especially, but others. But I mean, some of this big money trade, and in their view is that because of Fed policy, because of the Federal Reserve Board's policies, because of what kind of money that the federal government has spent, and having come through this whole COVID thing, that there are some macroeconomic analysts, most in fact, that think we're going to enter a period of strong inflation. So that usually triggers these fund managers to go, well, we better look for hard commodities. Hard commodities is something that usually rises. So the old idea of the rising tide floats all market. I don't, trust me, I'm old. I know it's not that simple, but that is an underlying factor here. So what's the other thing? To me, like when you get to the deferred cattle markets, Susan, if ever a market deserved to be a premium, it's those. For both supply reasons, because there's less cattle in the second half of the year compared to last year, and compared to the first half of this year. So supply is favorable, in my opinion, and supply is going to get less with high price feed. We're going to feed to less weights, right? And I think from a demand standpoint. Now, I don't know if you ever have anybody on here, Susan, that says, well, demand, whatever. Demand is awesome. And it both domestically and internationally. First 2 months of the year, record export sales for the year. And domestically, when we look at the impact of COVID, and now as we see these more and more of these states relaxing some of their restrictions, going to slowly get these restaurants back open. It is going to get warmer. I would expect that demand would even improve a little bit domestically from the already very, very good level that we're at. So, I do think that it's a little bit unfair to go, well, they should never be a premium. Yeah, well, I know I don't like premiums as a feeder because it makes you pay more for replacement cattle than you'd like. It has a tendency to make you feed cattle longer, except maybe in this environment where cost of gain is really high with this higher price corn.
So you talked about the retail movement of this. We're getting into grilling season as well. That's got to help. Mask mandates being lifted, grills being pulled out.
It's interesting. I had somebody try to tell me that, well, because we got used to grilling, that the restaurant trade's not going to help us. I'm going like, boy, I tell you what, you want to talk about, um, wearing an umbrella in a rain suit. I guess I just choose not to be that negative. I I think yes. No, we talked about this before, where we shift the paradigm from 65-35 retail to wholesale restaurants. We moved that a long ways where we've seen a lot more retail. And I think we'll continue to see that because typically once you train somebody to do something new, then they go, well, I guess I know how to grill a steak now, so I'm going to grill a steak. However, I also believe that there's a segment of the economy that are so sick of being inside. And I don't know, Susan, I get the feeling you're a bit of a social person as well.
Just a
That
little.
they're just a little, yeah. That they are anxious to let's get out, go out to dinner, And so I guess I sure think that there's going to be some of that pent up demand, and maybe more so on the two coasts, but even around here, I think even my wife and I, let's go out to eat once, right? I mean, it's finally it's a social thing as much as it is a consumption thing.
Are we going to continue though? We talked about it kind of coming at the top of the show. Seventh week of soft cash. How much longer can this trend continue for these cattle guys?
Well, one thing that I do know about the market is it abhors sideways. This is really unusual. I don't really remember, frankly, when cash has stayed the same price this long. And as a feeder, of course, I'm on our side. You're looking at margins that you're going like, okay, so boxes have been 240, boxes have been 225, and the market's still 112, 114. Okay, I guess that doesn't make much sense. What does make sense, unfortunately, is we continue to experience a time here where the independent feeder has very little leverage because of the high amount of cattle that have been forward contracted and formula priced and whatever mechanism that they're using with these alternative marketing agreements. And we've got more of those moving forward here, unfortunately, in March and April. So I would like to think as we get into slightly less numbers, Susan, that we can gain a bit of that leverage back. In my view, the best way to get that leverage back is to have less formula cattle. Working on it. Not going to fix it today, unfortunately, but it's a huge issue, I believe, for the cattle person.
All right. Well, go take your wife out for a good steak dinner, and we'll catch up with you next week.
Perfect. Thanks, Susan.
Brad Kooima has been joining us this week, and that is Cattle Call. I'm Susan Littlefield.